The second kind of point I want to make is about a different kind of sustainability, which I'm sure is more familiar to you. We live in a society, and it's important to remember this, we live in a society that is the richest in human history. And we may be short of money occasionally, we may want to get certain things, but in the long sweep of things, we live in the richest society that has ever existed on the face of the planet. Even in the space of my lifetime, I've seen extraordinary things. I grew up in a family where in the kitchen we didn't have a refrigerator. We had an icebox. A man came down the street once a week or whenever it was and put a big block of ice in your icebox. Funny thing, good thing to have a fridge. You know, we got a car. One day we got a car, marvellous. And a black and white television, amazing. Extraordinary events in a small child's life growing up. But it just doesn't ever stop, of course. These were just the first tentative steps into what we now call consumerism. The simple fact is that this extraordinarily affluent society we live in is not sustainable. It's not sustainable in the long term. It's not sustainable for other people on the planet. We see, and I see, I'm no different from anybody, we see the food and the cars and the consumer goods, it's normal. I jump in my car, I drive down to Coledale, I go back to Sydney, that's normal. But it actually can't be normal for the rest of the planet. If all people on Earth had our lifestyle, it would take 2 or 3 planets. That in terms of all the resources, all the petroleum, etc., it is simply not possible for 6 billion people on the Earth to live this way. If that sounds a little fantastic, then in a more realistic sense, libertarian capitalism, this expanding economy, is also not sustainable for reasons that I'm sure you all know, which is fossil fuel use and the creation of CO2 in the atmosphere, which is heating the planet. I don't know whether you follow the latest results of climate change, but it's apparent that the IPCC, the group of scientists who studied this, have actually, in their desire to convince governments of the danger, they've not wanted to appear too alarmist. And one of the problems is that a lot of their predictions are now proving to be far too cautious. Predictions about how difficult and how quickly things are changing. In my view, we seem to be, as a society, sleepwalking into disaster. And no one, well, in the Bush administration, there is a small, slow shift to acknowledge the existence of climate change. But to reassure everybody, it's okay because we'll solve it with human ingenuity. I think human ingenuity is a great thing and we're going to need a lot of it in the next 50 years. But human ingenuity alone, through the most fantastic renewable system, energy system, is not going to be enough. One of the reasons it won't be enough is that the actual economy and the way things are designed doesn't take account of climate change. It's not a natural thing. Sir Nicholas Stern, who did the big report for the British government on climate change, made this point. He said he regarded the crisis around climate as an example of what he called market failure. Market failure. He said, I quote him, "Markets do not automatically provide the right type and quantity of public goods, because in the absence of the right kind of public policy, there are no returns to private investors for doing so." In other words, if there's not a buck in it, why would anybody invest in a renewable energy system? He says, thus climate change is an example of market failure. All in all, it must be regarded as the greatest market failure. As the market failure on the greatest scale the world has ever seen. This is a guy who is a vice president of the World Bank. He's not a raving lefty or a greenie. And as I say, human ingenuity will get us a long way, but we also need to look at the kind of economy we have and what makes it tick, this kind of libertarian capitalism. Climate change, it's easy to kind of say how difficult it's going to be and how important it is. It's also a problem of diabolical difficulty. The central difficulty is that it gets back to the point I made before. So much of the good life that we enjoy and that thousands of people up and down the coast of Georgia, is unsustainable. And what that means is to decrease fossil fuel use and change to renewables, the price of energy has to go up. It has to go up radically. The price of electricity, the price of petrol. And this is what will cause a really big upset. This is what a lot of politicians fear, because they don't want to tell people your lifestyle is going to become a lot more costly. How can you possibly get elected to government? How can you possibly stay in government if you accept the logic of climate change, accept that the price of energy has to go up? That has one very clear meaning. It means that energy is in everything. Energy is in food, it's in the chairs, it's in everything. Because buy a nice piece of fish, I love eating fish. It takes a motorboat to get out there and catch the fish. If the price of oil and electricity goes up, life becomes a lot more expensive. That raises, for progressive people, a very big issue about will there be equality of sacrifice? Will there be fair's fair in terms of, because some people, if the price of electricity goes up tomorrow, a lot of people will find it very hard, very difficult. But you can't let that happen. There's got to be some kind of, as I say, equality. If you think about it, what else will happen? In Britain, where the debate on this is much more advanced. So the truth about climate change and sustainability is actually quite shocking. And it's very hard to know what will happen beyond the short term, because if you make, which governments can do, mandatory 20, 30%, 40% maybe of energy, coal energy, make that mandatory that it must come from renewables, well, what do you do after that? Because that doesn't solve the problem. It goes on. And somehow, this really does, we're in uncharted territory, or at least we're not, and our kids would be in uncharted territory. No one knows how this problem will be solved. One fact being, of course, that there are huge, powerful lobby groups based around aluminium, which consumes huge amounts of electricity, the coal industry, the petroleum industry, and so on. There are people who have a very big vested interest in stopping, and have done so for quite a while, stopping any real tackling of the climate issue. And as I say, there is a problem, a political problem, is that no politician really wants to tell people the unpleasant truth, because they want to be re-elected. But having said all that, facts are difficult things, regardless of how unpleasant the truth is. The facts of climate change are very, very slowly, but quite relentlessly forcing themselves to our attention. The question will be, how bad will it become before we actually start to do something about it and make the kinds of changes that are necessary? So just to sum up, I'm talking about unsustainable social relationships slowly being formed and then driving out of non-commercial relationships, and the economic and environmental unsustainability. These are the sort of underlying issues which in some ways have popped up in the election campaign, but which will roll on way past it.